Good morning, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Bhakti Abdullah Putra, and I would be your Master of Ceremony today. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I know that it feels like flying with an airplane, yeah, listening to this Indonesian music. So let me begin by giving you a warm welcome to the virtual talk, the series number 10, hosted by Sampurna University in collaboration with Indonesian Extensive Reading Association, IERA, and supported by the Extensive Reading Foundation. Thank you for coming. And prior to the webinar, there are some rules that should be followed by all participants here. The first, while the speakers are presenting, all participants should turn off their audio to maintain the continuity of this event. And the second one, in the Q&A session, participants may ask some questions to the speakers, either by typing up the questions in the chat box or using the raise hand feature. Questions will be selected by the moderator and delivered to the speakers. And at the end of the session, all participants have to complete the exit form, which will be shared later on. So remember the rules that we have today. And proudly, we have invited some keynote speakers who have passion in promoting extensive reading, and here they are. The first is Professor Loh Chin Yi from the National Institute of Education at Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. She also contributes as a researcher in literacy and literature education. Welcome, Professor Loh Chin Yi. The second one is Bapak Firman Palindungan, PhD from Universitas Teuku Umar and also a member of Indonesian Extensive Reading Association. Welcome, Bapak Firman. And the third one, Ibu Susilewati MA, our head of English Language Education Study Program of Sampurna University, and also one of the members of Indonesian's Extensive Reading Association. And she is also currently teaching at Sampurna University. And also I would like to welcome Bapak Willy Renandia from Indonesian's Extensive Reading Associations as well. Welcome to our event. And other than that, our honorable speakers, we also invite two panelists at this event. They are Dwi Firly Ashari, SPD, an educator at Singapore School, Jakarta, and also he is our alumnus from Sampurna University. And the second one is Desi Putri Octaviani, who is currently a student majoring in English language education at our university as well. And also I would like to welcome the Honorable President of Sampurna University, Dr. Marcel Scott. Thank you for attending our event. It is now my pleasure to introduce Sampurna University Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, Bapak Dr. Supriyatna, who will give his opening remarks this morning. Bapak Dr. Supriyatna, this time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Bhakti. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Supriyatna, Vice Rector for Academic Affairs of Sampurna University. But today I'm also as an acting Dean of Faculty of Education, Sampurna University. And I'm pleased to welcome you to virtual talk number 10. Dear colleagues in the room, distinguished participants, I'm familiar with some faces here like Pak Willy and other participants. So welcome to this webinar to all ladies and gentlemen who are virtually connected. Thank you very much for your participation and we really appreciate it. Literacy has been one of the major issues being discussed among educators in Indonesia. The result of the studies done by several institutions on the level of literacy and reading habits in Indonesia become an eye-opening for teachers and educational institutions in the country to find solutions to increase student literacy. To take part in increasing literacy skills in Indonesia, particularly in higher education, English Language Education Study Program, Faculty of Education, Sampurna University, has determined to improve multiliteracy skills of teacher candidates through several learning activities. One of the activities is conducting extensive reading virtual talk in collaboration with Indonesian Extensive Reading Association, which is also supported by Extensive Reading Foundation. This webinar is part of IR program, which invites universities in different parts of Indonesia to be the host of extensive reading webinar. Sampurna University is fortunate to receive this invitation to conduct internationally recognized program. This virtual talk program will give benefits not only to faculty of education, but also to the participants. Through this webinar, we can gain in-depth insights on literacy from extensive reading experts, build networks, create opportunity to work with other institutions to improve literacy skills, increase awareness on the importance of extensive reading, gain some updated strategies on how to build reading attitude and skills, share ideas and programs implemented. In this opportunity, I would like to extend my gratitude and appreciation to distinguished speakers and panelists for this webinar. Those are Professor Loh Chin Yi from National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, to Pak Firman Parlindungan PhD from University Teguh Umar, and Ibu Susilowati MA from Sampurna University, and also to the panelists, Dwi Firly Asari from Singapore School, Pantai Indah Kapuk. He is actually the alumni of FOE also. And panelists, the second panelist, Desi Putri Octavia, student of English Language Education, FOE Sampurna University. I also would like to extend my appreciation to all the committee members who made this webinar possible, to the moderator, host, and co-host, and the supporting units like GA, IT, and operation of Sampurna University. Thank you very much. And to almost 200 registered participants who come from different backgrounds, teachers at all educational levels, lecturers and university students from other universities, instructors in non-formal institutions, and extensive reading practitioners across the nation and from other countries. We thank you so much for your participation and involvement in this webinar. I really hope you will enjoy the webinar. As always, learning a new thing from new people in new environment, and importantly in new normal, will always be fascinating. Have a fruitful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bapak Dr. Supriyatna, for the remarkable speech. Moving right along, today's agenda will be led by our moderator, who is Ibu Rusiana MPD. She is one of the members of Indonesian Extensive Reading Association and an academician at Universitas Muria Kudus. Ibu Rusiana, the floor is yours, and enjoy our event.
Well, thank you. Pak Bhakti, can you hear my voice? Okay, yeah. Well, sorry.
It's clear, Bu Rusiana.
Okay. Good. Yeah, okay. Well, good morning to all of the main speakers, panelists, and participants of Virtual Talk number 10, held by Indonesian Extensive Reading Association, IERA, and the Foundation, which is now in collaboration with Sampurna University. I'm so honored to be the moderator of today's talk. I'm Rusiana from Universitas Muria Kudus, Central Java. And the topic of today's talk is extensive reading for service teachers. And we're so thrilled and fortunate to have Professor Loh Chin E, Bapak Firman Parlindungan PhD, and Ibu Susilawati MA as the main speakers. We also have Mas Dwi Firly Azhari. He told me to call him so. So he is Mas teacher, Mas Guru ya. We have Mas Menteri and we have Mas Guru here, Bapak Firman, Mas Dwi Firly Azhari and Desi Putri Octavia as the panelists. Well, the outline of today's talk will be main speaker session followed by Q&A and panelist session followed by Q&A as well. Some participants are here joining via Zoom and some others are joining YouTube, Sampurna University YouTube. We invite the participants to ask questions during the talk by directly comment on Zoom chat room as well as the YouTube channel. The off-screen panelists would help you to answer your questions, or if you really have burning questions and want to address your questions to a certain speaker, please feel free. Well, now let's get ready to listen to the first talk by Professor Loh Chin E. But beforehand, let me introduce her. She is Associate Professor and Deputy Head of Research in the English Language and Literature Academic Group at the NIE, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. And her primary research interest is in literature education, literacy and equity, with a current focus on reading and school libraries. She is the author of The Space and Practice of Reading, a case study of reading and social Pacific policies, practices, and perspectives in global times, Routledge 2018, and various university textbooks and poetry anthologies. And her work has been published in English and Education, Journal of Adolescence and Adult Literature, Literacy, Changing English, Teaching and Teacher Education, British Journal of Sociology and Education, among others. And today she's going to talk about pro-service teachers reading extensively, widely, and critically. Now let's welcome Professor Loh Chin E. Hope I say your name correctly. You have 25 minutes for the talk, and I will signal you 5 minutes before the time is up. Professor Loh Chin E, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rusiana,
Yeah.
I hope you can hear me clearly. And
It's clear.
Thank you. I would like to begin by thanking ERA as well as Sukarno University for inviting me to give this talk. It is such an honor to be with you. And I am so heartened that you have taken all this effort, even during this difficult time, to organize this learning for your students. I think that is very good effort to really make use of technology to ensure that everybody can still continue learning. And of course, to the Extensive Reading Foundation for continuing to support the important work of extensive reading and spreading it to where people need to know more about it. So I'm going to share screen and then I will begin my talk. I'm not sure if you can hear some of the birds outside my window, but that's just the background noise. We have a bit of nature in Singapore too. The title of my talk is Pre-Service Teachers Reading Extensively, Widely, and Critically. And I'm really going to be talking about extensive reading for pre-service teachers, but I want to extend it and give various strategies that pre-service teachers can use to help them to read more, to read different kinds of texts, as well as to read critically. And I hope that even as they practice this themselves, this is something that they can bring to their classrooms as well. So just beginning with what is reading, the definition. Reading is the meaningful decoding of print or online text and media. I focus on the word meaningful decoding. It's not just about reading the ABCs or putting words together, but about understanding what these words mean in context. And in today's day and age, we are reading on print, on paper still, but we are also reading a lot of online texts. And when I talk about media, it could be Instagram, it could be newspapers, and fiction as well as non-fiction. And the second thing in this definition that is important is that we read for the purposes of pleasure, learning, and achieving one's goals and participating in society. So we read for enjoyment. We read to learn new things, because when you read, you can find out about places you haven't been to, things you didn't know before that. We read because we need to learn how to do something. For example, maybe a computer was delivered to us and we need to fix it, and we go online to read about how to use it. We read to participate in society because we need to know about what is happening in our world, what is happening in society, what the government is saying, so that we can make relevant decisions. So what do our students have to read today? And what do our pre-service teachers have to read today? Of course, we have to read books. We've got fiction, that's Harry Potter, and we've also got non-fiction that we often have to read. But we also have to read Instagram posts. That's President Jokowi, right, with his posts, and a lot of people put posts out. So social media is a lot of what we read. We have to read to make decisions. So I have given an example of somebody trying to decide which phone plan or which internet plan to go for. We have to make decisions using our reading. We have to read articles to find out about things we want to know about. And we have to decide what is accurate and not accurate, what we should believe, and come to our own decisions. And we have to read the news again to make decisions. And there are many different voices coming at us. So we need to be able to read to understand. And in this 21st century, what is important about reading is that it is no longer something that is seen as something that you learn one time. You learn in childhood. I learned my ABCs. I learned how to read some words, and I know how to read. I don't have to learn how to read now that I'm an adult. But rather, if you look at the part that is highlighted in red on the slide, it says, instead, it is viewed as an expanding set of knowledge, skills, and strategies which individuals build on throughout life. In other words, learning to read and reading more difficult things becomes something we have to keep learning to do. So even for myself as a professor, I'm learning to read new things, to read different things. So learning to read and reading becomes something which is important for lifelong learning. It is something that is important for discerning what some people call fake news, and it is important for our personal growth. So today I'm going to talk about the three important kinds of reading. Firstly, reading extensively. Secondly, reading widely. And thirdly, reading critically. Firstly, reading extensively. Many of you will be familiar with Prof. Kreshon and what he says about extensive reading. But here I give you a quote from him. If you're interested, you can go to his YouTube and read his many articles online about extensive reading. But he says extensive reading is an approach to the teaching of language which involves students reading a lot of books that are easy and interesting and that they choose. Now, extensive reading is often compared with intensive reading, where you're reading a short text, and it may be a difficult text and you have to learn how to read it. But in the case of extensive reading, the emphasis is really on reading a lot. So you want the students to be reading books that they find easy to read, that they can practice. So books that are easy and interesting. So things that the child or the pre-service teacher likes to read, and the story is interesting, that students choose. So you see here's a picture of my daughter when she was much younger, and a friend of us was so kind to give us her daughter's secondhand books. And there on the table, my daughter was just flipping through it, so happy that she had so many books to read. And that is really what extensive reading is about, giving a child a lot of books. And in our case, giving pre-service teachers a lot of books that are interesting. And from those set of books, they can choose what they want to read. And why do we do it? I think we do it because we recognize that extensive reading is about enjoyment. We want to motivate our pre-service teachers to read. We want to motivate our students to read. So we want to make sure they have things that they enjoy reading. And when they enjoy reading, they practice reading by just reading more, right? Because it's enjoyable, so they read more. And when they read more, they get better at reading. And that also cultivates a lifelong reading habit, so that whenever they feel like they need to do something, learn something, they know that reading is something that they can turn to. And in the area of foreign language or second language, they get better at it as well. This is my colleague, Park Willie, very famous and well-known. And he talks about L2 and foreign language learning. And again, he talks about the amount of input, right? The more, quoting Crashaw, the idea is that the more input we have, the better the quality of the input. Then students can have the chance to learn more. And in red, I have highlighted, while we cannot create an L2 environment that resembles an L1 learning context, we can immerse our students in the language they're learning by making available a large supply of books and other print or non-print materials in the classroom. So we can make sure that we have a lot of things to read and engage students in this reading. Now, for both of us, for those of us who teach pre-service teachers, I teach a master's course in NIE. Actually two. One of my courses is called Reading in a Multimodal Age, where we talk about different ways of teaching reading, including reading online and the different ways of engaging technology with reading. Another course is called The History and Practice of Reading. And one of the practices I have in my classroom is to set aside time for my students to read. So in my master's class, Reading in a Multimodal Age, at the beginning of every 3-hour session, I will bring a new genre to the classroom and I will read aloud one chapter to my students. Another lesson, I may bring a picture book and read aloud the picture book to say these are the things they can read. In my history and practice of reading class, we have a mini book club where we read short stories. And before we look at the theory, we start by discussing the short story we have read. So this is the first tip for pre-service teachers on your own to read a lot of books. And I think for those of us who work with pre-service teachers, perhaps to provide the opportunities in our classroom for our students to read a lot of books. Secondly, reading widely. Wide reading is basically when students get to read different kinds of books. It is important because it actually supports word recognition, what we would know as vocabulary, because as the students read different genres, maybe they read comics, they read storybooks, they read newspapers, they read articles, these different genres support their language growth. Although you can learn a lot from watching TV, definitely the research tells us that you can learn even more from reading from books, because a lot of the uncommon words appear in books that we read. It also supports reading comprehension, because as you read more and different kinds of books, again, you become more familiar with how to comprehend these kinds of texts. So for example, if you read a newspaper article, when you get to a newspaper article, you will know that immediately there is the heading. So that is the headlines, and you will know to turn to that, and that helps you to read it faster. If you read a fiction, a book, a storybook, you know that it is a story. So you approach it as a story and then you read it faster and you understand it. It also helps with listening comprehension as well, where students who read different kinds of texts are able to understand what they hear better. And I like to elaborate on this idea of flexibility. Okay, when a student reads different kinds of text, they actually become more flexible when they are given different kinds of text. In the PISA findings, when they looked at the PISA reading results in 2002, in a report by Kirsch, one of the things they pointed out was that when they look at the students who did the test, students who read 4 genres, at least 4 different kinds of genres, tend to do better academically. on the test itself. So they did better in their reading comprehension. And this actually included comics. So what do I mean by students who do 4 or more genres? So for example, a student who says they read storybooks, who read newspapers, who read comics, who also read nonfiction. The reason why this is important is because in this day and age, we're going to have different kinds of texts. As we get older, we will suddenly have to read something which is different from what we are familiar with. And if we have been exposed to more genres, then we become a bit faster. We become a bit more flexible when we see a new text. We will ask, how do we read this? How do we understand this text? In comparison, if a student says only read comics, it is good. It's not that it's not good. But if the student only reads comics, when you give the student another kind of book, like a storybook or maybe a nonfiction, they might find it more difficult to comprehend it initially, and they need more time. So I think it is important to emphasize not just extensive reading, but extensive reading that is wide as well. And in fact, reading widely is one of the important factors in extensive reading. So what can we encourage our pre-service teachers and students to read? We can encourage them to read both fiction and non-fiction. As a recommendation, I like to recommend that biographies are a very good sort of non-fiction to get students started on, because they are like stories. And it is so interesting to find out about the life of somebody. And maybe as we are finding out, we will find out about news and information about the world from reading about the biographies as well. So do get students to read both fiction and non-fiction. Magazines and newspapers. Interestingly, in some magazines, they will have feature articles that are actually quite long, 3 or 4 pages. And it is good to read these different kinds of articles. And for students who are interested in a particular topic, let's say I'm interested in photography, we should encourage the students to read magazines, to read online articles about what they're interested in, because then they get better at it. Instead of looking for that information in the first language, perhaps they can look for the information in the second or foreign language. Ebooks, I know in this day and age, people might not be able to go to the library. It is a bit difficult. In Singapore, the libraries were closed for almost 2 months as well. And even now, to go down to the library, some people may not be so comfortable with stepping out of the house. And not everybody can purchase ebooks, but there are many free books online. One that I like to recommend is Project Gutenberg. They've put a lot of the classics online, and you can even download it to read on your computer, or to read on your phone, or to read on your tablet device if you have one. So maybe one project you can set yourself is, I'm going to explore what kind of ebooks I can find online. Finally, we can even just read anything we can find around us. For me, my first language in Singapore is English. My second language is Chinese. I know it's very strange, but because I grew up in an education system where we learn English, so I'm more familiar with English. But one of the things that we do with our children is sometimes when we purchase food and the nutritional facts are in Chinese, we look at the Chinese nutritional facts rather than the English, or we read the Chinese and the English so that we can understand, oh, this is what the English says, oh, this is what the Chinese word is. And this is important because this is stuff that we read every day. We need to know how to understand this information. So read anything and everything you can find around you. So tip number 2, read many different kinds of books and texts. And I like to challenge, if there are any pre-service teachers here, to do a quick survey of your own reading. Write down 5 things you read last week, and then see if there is something that you have not read in terms of a genre, and say, I'm going to challenge myself. Today, I'm going to read that different genre that I haven't read before. Third, read critically. So let's look at this information. This was taken in Singapore in 2016. I'm not sure about what is the situation in other countries, but sometimes we get information like this, and then there's a picture. Okay, Punggol Waterway Terraces roof collapse. That's a building in Singapore. And then another one is about the PMD, the personal mobility device, and there's a fire. But all this information is online. How do we know if it's real or not? Okay, this is fake news that I'm showing you. So I put it on the record that this is not real, okay? Again, this is from ABC News in the USA, where it says when fake news stories make news headlines, and it is very interesting because it is about this man, Marco Chacon, who decided to create a fake story for fun. And he got a shock when his fake story was actually picked up by the news and was reported in the newspaper. And they issued an apology for reporting it. But very often we do see a lot of news and we see information and we have to decide if it is real or not.
Excuse me, Professor La.
Yes?
Yeah, still have 3 minutes left.
Sorry?
You still have 3 minutes remaining.
Oh, so I had to speed up. Thank you.
Okay.
So basically for today's reading, we have to be able to understand, search for, evaluate, and use information meaningfully. Now, in order to do that, we need to be able to not take what we read at face value. We need to be able to see, oh, is there anything that is wrong with this piece of news or this thing that we are looking at that is different? Marianne Wolf talks about the idea of slow or deep reading instead of skimming and scanning, which is what we often do with newspaper text. She said, we know we don't have enough chance to engage with reading longer texts like storybooks or maybe even longer articles and to think about it. And I think that that is something that is quite important for us to do. So how can we read critically and read deeply? Okay, first, I think it is important to read widely and with an open mind. So when you read something, you need to ask yourself, is this true? Is this which perspective is this person coming from? Whose point of view is this article or this story written from? I think we should read lengthier text. So it is good to read articles. It is good to read newspapers. It is good to read short magazine articles, but we should also read lengthier text and balance what we like to read with what we like to read, but maybe a little something that's a little bit more difficult and think about it. And of course, read more difficult text to challenge ourselves. So tip number 3, as you are reading extensively, you can practice deep and critical reading. Ask yourself, whose perspective is it written from? Is this something you should believe? What is the opinion you have on this? So basically, I have come to the end of my talk, and I just would like you to remember 3 things. When you read extensively, read a lot, read widely, read different genres, and read critically. Think when you read. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Professor La Chin Yi.
You're welcome.
That was an informative and inspiring talk. And you have shared about some tips and strategies of reading extensively, and then widely and critically. And now let's get into the second speaker, Bapak Firman Kamindungan, PhD from Universitas Teguh Umar. Bapak Firman is an associate assistant professor at University Teguh Umar and is currently the head of Curriculum and Language Development Center. He earned his doctoral degree from the Ohio State University, USA, focusing on reading and literacy. His research interests revolve around language learning and instruction, literacy studies, identity, culture, and language socialization. He has published several articles and reputable journals. His recent research is investigating the intersection between mainstream schooling and literacy learning at an Islamic school in the US. Additionally, in collaboration with his colleagues, he examined non-linguistic aspects of communications that may support second language acquisition. He has also explored Indonesian cultural values permitted in the government-mandated English textbooks. And he is a groundbreaking researcher and educator who continues to gain recognition both nationally and globally. He has been invited in many seminars and conferences presenting a range of different topics. And in 2019, he was awarded Notable Leader Award by the ASEAN Pacific Islander, Desi American, or APIDA, for his commitment to diversity, service, and citizenship in higher institutions. Bapak Firman is also a member of ERA, and the title of his presentation today is Making Extensive Reading Culturally Relevant and Engaging. Bapak Firman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bu Rusiana. First of all, I would like to give a warm greetings for Pak Supriyatna, the Vice Rector of Sampurna University, and all faculty members and participants for today, and especially for Pak Willy Renandia and Dr. Loh Chin E or Dr. E, a distinguished speaker today. So let me share my screen first. Okay, is it clear, Bu Rusiana? Can you see my PowerPoint? Yes, okay. So my topic today is making extensive reading culturally relevant and engaging. I found that this topic would be interesting for all of us because besides extending what Dr. E has explained earlier, I think this topic, I think many research has showed that culture or the the cultural content would be beneficial for language learners, because when we include culturally relevant text or culturally relevant content to the language learning, it may help the students to pick up or acquire the language easily and better. So let me begin with what I will explain today. The first is I would like to looking back at what is extensive reading, and Dr. E I think has explained it clearly earlier about what is extensive reading. And the second is why culturally relevant text and what makes text culturally relevant. And the final PowerPoint or the final point of my presentations today is some concluding remarks about it. So let me begin with what is extensive reading. I think Pak Willy has explained in his paper in 2007, and it's actually the same paper quoted by Dr. E earlier, that learners read large quantities of books and other material in an environment that nurtures a lifelong reading habit. So the key of extensive reading is to nurture a lifelong reading habit. And in my opinion, to nurture this lifelong reading habit is by making sure that the reading activity is enjoyable. And that's what Professor Day a couple weeks ago explained that, and I really like the quote that reading gain without reading pain. So we have to make sure that the students doing the activity for extensive reading in an enjoyable environment, in an environment that nurtures a lifelong reading habit. And this is a quote from Louis Rosenblatt. I'm sure you are familiar, and I think Pak Irfan, a member of IRA, the other day also mentions about her, that she is a big proponent of transactional reader response theory. And she said that text is just ink on a page until readers comes along and gives it a life. And I think that resonates more on the topic that I'm explaining today. according to her, the meaning of text is not reside exclusively within the text or within the reader. Instead, she suggested that the meaning of text occurs as a result of the transaction between the reader and the written words or the text. So during this transaction, the text acts as a stimulus for the reader, who responds in a personal way as feelings or personal connections, and memories come into play during this act of reading. So the keywords here really is transaction between the reader, the text, and the context. And the second quote here from Bishop, or Dr. Bishop, who is an alumni from the Ohio State University. In her dissertation, she mentions that books are mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. So this term was actually coined first by Emily Style in 1988, and then extended by Bishop. And in this notion, we should understand that books are windows when they offer a view into reality, not just into imaginary words. So that being said, we have to make sure that students learn other culture that may be different from their own, from the books that they read. And then through access to Windows text or books as windows, the students learn to understand and appreciate others because they learn the culture that may be different from their own. And then books are also mirrors when they reflect a reader's own life. So I can see my own culture, my own personal feelings, my own identity in the books. So that's when the books call mirrors. So you can find yourself reflected in a book is a powerful thing, because when students read books where they see characters like themselves or their family or their culture being valued in the world, they feel a sense of belonging, and this sense of belongings can nurture the lifelong reading habit. And then the third term is books are sliding glass doors, and what it means by sliding glass doors is when the books allow readers to walk into a story and become part of the world that has been created by the author. And I think this is a powerful quote to understand, to make sure that nurturing reading habits in extensive reading. And then why culturally relevant text? And there are many studies in the literature, if you can find, that actually highlight what is culturally relevant text. So here I quoted some or conclude some of the definitions. That culturally relevant texts are those that readers can connect to. So the keywords is something that readers can connect to and can draw on their background knowledge and experience to make meaning. And when teachers use culturally relevant books, students understand the books more fully, and as a result become more engaged in their reading. When students become engaged in text, they are motivated to read more, rather than plodding through a lengthy novel that maybe we can lose ourselves in the books because we don't comprehend the text easily. That it is better for us to give students something that we can imagine easily, or the students can imagine easily. So another important reasons for using culturally relevant text is that they help students understand who they are. And we understand that schools, especially in the context of Indonesia, place where students negotiate identities. So we negotiate our identities in the school, and that schools either can affirm or deny those identities. And culturally relevant text here is meant to actually affirm these identities. So this is the illustrations. The keywords here is background knowledge and knowledge of the word, or something that we learn from reading. And it happens in the reading process. And Goodman says, and I quote it here, that the sense you make of the text depends on the sense you bring to it. So it is really important for us to make sure that the books that students read entail some things that they can imagine for their own comprehension. So now, what makes text culturally relevant? So there are two headings, or there are two big points here that we should consider when we choose books or give alternative or options for students. The first is that text or that book should be include social, cultural, and economic institutions such as occupations. Is this books related any occupations in our context, and housing patterns in our context, or family relationships, schooling, religious, that might be different or the same to the students. And then the setting include chronological time, age, and sex of the characters, language variations, and the theme, moral or worldview, and readers' experience with certain kinds of text. So these elements, these kinds of elements are some points that we should consider when we give text to the student. It's not all the elements should be in the books, but one of them, maybe one or two, might be related to the books that might consider as culturally relevant. And then this is some examples that I would like to show you. Localizations or a localized book from a Jack and the Beanstalk book, and translated or localized in Indonesian context becomes Jaka and Pohon Kacang Ajaib, and it's actually a bilingual book, which I think some of you might be interested in teaching children with literature. And then another example is this one, Si Bungsu Kata, or The Youngest Frog, a folktale from K Archipelago, Indonesia, by Murti Bunanta. And look at the pictures, how the pictures and really relate to Indonesian context. And I think children in this case would easily pick up the text. And this is some novel or some books which categorized as crossover literature, and I think would be interesting for young adults and adults, or pre-service teachers, The Dark Fantastics and Yo Soy Muslim. And look at the pictures, we can tell from the cover themselves that how it is related from the characters, the skin color of the characters that might relate to the students. So the key here is diversity. Yeah, we do need diverse books. And when I say students need diverse books, I'm saying that they need books that reflect their own experience as well as experience of the others. As I said earlier, about books are windows and books are mirrors. And diverse books mean stories about different race and cultures, about gender identity, about people who live in poverty. Diversity might include how a piece of literature addresses family structures, dialects, cultural traditions, and values. And here, I quoted from Goodman also that when diversity is absent from the literature we share with children, those who are left out infer that they are undervalued in our society, and those whose live are constantly reflected gains a false sense of their own importance, a sense that they are the privileged norm. And this is, I think, what we might want to consider when we conduct an extensive reading. Of course, the big questions would be maybe for many of us, especially who live in or teach in a remote area, where can I get the books, right? So that's the big questions, and the books might be not cheap, but I'm sure with a little bit of creativity, you can find relevant books from the internet, as mentioned earlier by Dr. E, that Project Gutenberg, for example, is a good source that provides open resource for us to find some books. I think that will be all from me. And thank you so much for the opportunity again. And this is my Instagram and WhatsApp and email. And maybe we can move later to the questions and answer. Bu Rusiana.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Pak Firman. You still have 10 minutes actually. Oh, will you add some more, or it's just enough?
Yeah, I think that would be enough for now.
Okay. Thank you. And yeah, I think I forget to greet Bapak Billy Renandia. Hello, Bapak. How are you?
Yes, Ibu Rus. Yes, how are you?
Yeah, I'm
Pleasure
fine.
to be here.
Bapak. Okay, so it's nice to see you again. Yeah, it's nice to see you again after some meetings of your absence. Yeah. Well, okay. I hope we can have more time for question and answer session later, because Pak Firman only spent around 20 minutes. Okay, and then now let's move to the next speaker, the third speaker, Ibu Susilawati MA, and let me read brief CV of Ibu Susilawati or Ibu Susi. Okay, so Ibu Susi is from Sampurna University. She will be delivering a talk entitled Nurturing Pre-Service Teachers with 21st C Skills Through Extensive Reading. She is the head of English Language Education Study Program, Faculty of Education, Sampurna University. She's been teaching LT methodology, lesson design and assessment, TEFL and CMG, and her research interest is in 21st C, GNL, and literacy education. She's also a member of ERA and has been providing ER to her student teachers and embedding it with the courses that she taught. In addition, she has facilitated workshop on literacy to schools. Ibu Susi, are you ready? Ibu?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
I'm
Ibu Susi, you
ready.
have 25. Yes, you have 25 minutes, and I'll give you a reminder 5 minutes before the time is up. Well, everyone, let's welcome Ibu Susi.
Thank you, Bu Rusiana. Thank you, Pak Willy Renandia, Dr. Shad, Pak Pri, and Pak Liman, and ERA members and participants. Thank you for coming to our webinar. And for today, I'd like to share about what we are implementing in Sampurna University, especially in English Language Education Department. So let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the screen already? Okay, so Bu Rusiana, can you see the screen? All right.
Very clear, Bu Susi.
Thank you, Papri. All right, so I'd like to share about this nurturing 21st century skill. I'd like to, I chose this word because nurturing, it's more than developing. We need to grow the skills of 21st century for pre-service teachers. So of course, I chose this the teaching method of extensive reading that we can do to help our pre-service teachers to get or to develop their 21st century skills. So I'd like to start the slides with this quote from Beers, 2011. So she mentioned about the ability to learn and create new ideas is essential for 21st century. So from this, and I get this another quotes from Abu Al-Rab, 2019. So here it says that to fully engage in modern society, learners need to acquire individual skills such as critical thinking, innovation, and self-direction, but also participatory competences such as collaboration, local connections, global connections, and technology utilizations, communication. So again, I go back to Beers again here. Excuse me. Okay. Okay. So having that, we chose about four Cs. I think everybody already know about this. How to embrace students with the four Cs, the super skills for the 21st century. So here we talk about the first C is communications, sharing thoughts, questions, ideas, and solutions. And we also talk about collaborations, working together to reach a goal, critical thinking, looking at problems in a new way, and creativity, trying a new approach to get things done. So all these four skills, C's, the four C's that we have to teach to the students, need to be able to facilitate the students with this. So again, having this, the four C's, the importance of the four C's, and then I go back to the Beers again, that she mentioned about the 21st C requires us to create a generations of thinkers, learners who think creatively, to solve problems, and who collaborate with others at home and in the workplace. So having this, let us have questions about what should we do. So again, another quote, good quotes about education's 21st century skills, like investing in educations and providing 21st century skills for students are fundamental components to nations' continued growth and prosperity. Okay, and so all these backgrounds comes to questions that are we ready as a teacher to be a 21st century skilled teacher? And the other one, we need to, as we are in the Teachers College, facilitating our pre-service teachers, and then we need to also ask questions about, are they ready to become a 21st skilled teacher? So having these questions, we need to come up with a strategy. Okay, and then there is a one strategy that I would like to share with you here is about extensive reading. Why we have expensive reading? Because in Indonesia, we need to design a high quality. We need to design a program that to address the needs of high quality teachers with the competencies to teach using 21st century approach. And we can see here in the pictures that there are 6 C's even of education for the futures, not only 4. So we need to come up with these. We need to make sure that we this 4 skills, the 6 C's are nurtured in the for the pre-service teachers. So we need to embrace the culture, like Firman mentioned about, and then we need to utilize connectivity. So I think it is beneficial for us having this pandemic situation. So we're still connected with others, and then with others from different backgrounds, and then we are going to do interdisciplinary approach as well. So having this, we want to know about the strategy to nurture free service teachers. So I'm in this study program, in English language study program. One of the strategy that we did is extensive reading. Okay, so I think I'd like to quote from what Willy Renandia has mentioned from Hitchcock Paris 2009, that extensive reading is a teaching approach that is so universally hailed as beneficial, important, and necessary. So having this, what we do or what we have been doing in English language education, that like Bu Rusiana mentioned, that we have been embedding it to the classes, okay, the extensive reading program. So this is what we do. For example, in my class in TEFL 1 and in English language for young learners, we are doing a lot of extensive reading. So here, when they do it, this is the picture of our class. These are the pictures of when the students did the English for young learners. So they do the extensive reading, especially for reading for young learners. So they can choose their own book, and then they share it with the others. Okay, the other students, pretended to be their learners. Okay, so they shared this, and then they can do a read aloud. They can do dialogue reading. They can do they can also do presentations. So having these activities, we believe that the 4C skills applied, because they need to communicate with others. They need to collaborate with others, like what we see on the pictures on the right. They also need to think critically how to put their thought on the poster and then share it to others. And then they also need to be creative to how to make the activity for the students engaging. So the other activity that we do is literacy what we call literature circle. So we also do that, and then we also do this group storytelling. So students are doing reading books in groups, and then they come up with this group storytelling. And the other activity that they did is they're doing a blog, writing a blog, talking about COVID-19, because there's so much interest in finding out on why like how this COVID-19 or influence education. So as the pre-service teachers, they try to find information about the influence of the pandemic to the education. The students who did this were from, she's from Kalimantan, and then she was observing the situations in the neighborhood, and then she also having experience getting difficulties in internet connections. So, and then also the students in their neighbors. So she came up with this website, the vlog, okay, and she talked about how this information can give or can get people aware of the fact that we have in Indonesia. So having all this extensive reading activities, of course, then as a pre-service teachers, because there need to be a 21st century skill of teachers. So they also need to do reflections. So being a 21st century teacher, one of the strategy or one of the skill that they need to do is reflecting what they have done or what they need to do in the future. So based on their reflections, they said about some benefit of extensive reading. Okay, on the left side, they said about something related to the language. Okay, they said that they can gain vocabulary skills, they can raise confidence in reading. Some of them are still not motivated to read, but then after doing some sessions, extensive reading, they can raise their confidence in reading. They also improve language competence and writing skills. And they also said that they can develop their autonomy in learning. And again, they also build their cultural awareness of by doing this extensive reading. And the other impacts or the other benefits of doing extensive reading, what they said is this is something that they mentioned when they did reflection. They said that they can build critical thinking skill, and then they also said that they encourage to do communication with others. For example, like when they did this storytelling, and they also need to do collaborations because even though they are far apart now, they are in their own areas. Of course, they need to do collaborations virtually. So even though they're not they cannot collaborate face to face, but they can do it virtually. And then they also said that this extensive reading can help them to develop creativity. So I hope this something that we can do in Teachers College in Indonesia to get this high quality of 21st century teachers. And I will end my sessions by this quote from Rodell, that if you're going to get anywhere in life, you have to read a lot of books. So thank you for listening, and I get this back to Ibu Rusiana. Thank you, Ibu.
Well, thank you very much, Ibu Susi. You actually still have 10 minutes, Ibu. Okay, but okay, I think Pak Firman and Bu Susi spent less than 25 minutes. So perhaps before move to the Q&A, I would like to invite Bapak Willy Renandia in case he is going to say something. Bapak Willy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you let me share Can you let me share my screen, please? I have a gift for everyone.
Okay, you still have around 10 minutes before
Yes.
Q&A. Please,
Can you let me share screen? I want to show you something.
Yes, please.
Okay, good. Here you go. Let me see. Where is it now? Okay, screen share. Okay, let me see if I can show my. Nope, it's not there. Sorry. Okay, just give me 1 second. There you go. Can you see that on my screen?
Take your time.
Can you see something on my screen?
Not yet.
Oh.
I can see.
Yes, but okay, yeah.
Yes.
You can.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Bapak.
So yes, this is a gift for everyone. It's a new chapter in an ebook format, and the title is The Primacy of Extensive Reading and Listening, that I co-authored with Richard Day, 2020. So this is kind of interesting for those of us who are interested in incorporating or infusing extensive reading in our other courses like speaking, reading, listening, and writing. Now, here is the idea behind this paper that I wrote with Richard Day. Extensive reading is usually done outside the classroom. Yeah. Extensive reading is often done outside the classroom, and that is a very good thing to do. But very often it's difficult for us to know whether or not the students are actually reading. So one thing you can do is to bring extensive reading into the classroom. So for example, in a writing class, before the students start writing on a topic, for example, COVID-19, for example, you want your students to write something on COVID-19. What you can do is to provide your students with a lot of reading materials related to COVID-19. So that is a kind of extensive reading infused into your normal language skill classes. The same thing if you teach speaking, for example, and the topic maybe is, studying overseas or studying in Singapore. For example, the topic is studying in Singapore, and you want your students to write something about studying in Singapore. Okay, not Singapore, my university, studying in my university. Okay, so before your students can write anything about studying overseas or in Singapore, then what you can do is to provide as many reading materials related to studying overseas or studying in Singapore. So that is one way of infusing extensive reading and also extensive listening in your daily language lessons. Now, here is the thinking behind this. Very often in a reading lesson that we do, the students only read one small reading passage, only one page long, only one or two paragraphs long. And that is not enough at all. So in a reading class, the students must do a lot of reading. The activities are good, fine for us to engage our students, but class time should be spent reading. In other words, the students must spend a lot of time doing the actual reading in the classroom. And one way to do that will be to provide students with multiple reading passages of the same topic. Remember, Chin Yi mentioned early on about reading widely, and that is one thing you can do. Give students a topic, but written from different perspectives and written in different genres. So that to me is extensive reading in action during your other lessons. Yep. So this book is free for everyone. I will send the link in the through the message box very soon. The link is willyrenandia.com. I will send the link very soon to you. Yeah. So this is one thing that I want to share. I am glad that one of the speakers mentioned about Louis Rosenblatt. It's a very interesting person, and she basically has these big ideas about reading. Number one is reading for information. I think she's got a fancy name for that, afferent reading. But the other type of reading, which is very much closely related to extensive reading, is known as aesthetic reading. So aesthetic reading is not just reading for information, but it is reading for you to appreciate, other things that readers can find in a story. In other words, if you do read aesthetically, you may find yourself being completely immersed in the story, and you become part of that story. And that basically is what extensive reading is about. It's all about reading, not just for information, but for engagement and for full enjoyment. So I like that idea very much. So thank you for bringing up that idea early on. And one thing that I want to mention is about wide reading widely, which is an excellent idea. Because eventually we want our students to be able to read different types of text. But you may find that actually when you provide different types of reading materials for your extensive reading program, many of your students may stick with one genre. For example, fiction. Even within fiction, students may find that romance is of special interest to them. And for some other students, it may be thrillers, mystery and things like that. And they may stay with the same genre for maybe 6 months or even 1 whole year. That is perfectly okay. In fact, research shows very clearly that students who are still developing, who are still learning to develop their reading skills, they tend to stay with one topic, one author for a period of time. Now, this is known as narrow reading. So to me, wide reading is good, narrow reading is also good, and they have to go together. Initially, maybe a lot of narrow reading of the same type, reading of the same genre, reading papers or novels by the same author. I think I've taken up 10 minutes of your time, Luciana. Thank you so much. Yes.
Well, yeah, thank you, Bapak Willy Renandia. So we're so happy to have the link later. That's a newly born chapter. Is it a chapter, Bapak? Okay. We can't wait to read that. And thank you also for help. Pak Willy masih mute. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. Is that a book or chapter, Bapak?
Is a chapter of a book that
Okay.
will be published in, let me see, in honor of a professor's retirement.
Okay.
It's an UPI professor's retirement, so it's a Festkrist or something.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for giving us the link later. So, and we can't wait to read that chapter. Well, and also thank you for helping me to conclude the. So you make my job as moderator to be easier because you have said some things about Louis that Pak Firman has explained, and then Professor Law has talked about wide reading, and you have also said about narrow and wide reading. Both of them are important. So now let's get to the next session, question and answer session. We will have around 10 minutes for the participants, and I have already got one from Saint Patrick Kang. Okay, can I, excuse me, Bapak or Masin, can you please raise hand and say and ask your questions directly?
Hello.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Can I excuse me? Can I see your face? I'm really curious to see your face because we know that you always join our talks, and yeah, you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please.
All right. Yeah. Such an honor for me. Thank you very much for this chance. I just want to ask, maybe for all speakers, I see that pre-service teachers come from different schools around Indonesia, that not all schools implemented ER or extensive reading. Therefore, how should teachers' colleges prepare pre-service teachers to cultivate ER through dialogic reading or literasi berimbang? So there are several points there that I can see in light of teachers' 6 C's that some speakers have mentioned before. Because I can see that Indonesian teachers and students, to some extent, we are still struggling to cultivate how to motivate them to read. And also, some students also have different speed in reading. We have KPM, kata per menit, yeah. So how teachers can be prepared for that. Thank you.
Okay, I think all the main speakers, you may answer the questions from Saint Patrick Kang.
Okay.
Start from Prof. Law, perhaps, or Ibu Susi, please. Yes.
Yes, Prof. Law. That's okay.
Maybe Ibo Susi first, because she was talking about the 16.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. Can I call you that in that thing? Okay. Thank you for always joining our webinar. We really appreciate that. Yes. In Sampurna University, the students happen to be coming from different background, different areas. And then now, since the pandemic, they are now at their hometown. Uh, they are spread from, from Sumatra to Sulawesi. And it was quite challenging when we did this extensive reading. Not what I because last time when I did this with my other cohort from English for Young Learners, it's quite easy because we can do it face to face. That's why they can do dialogue reading. But then when the pandemic happened, I think the show must go on, and then I tried to do to try to modify some extensive reading strategy here, by having like collaborative reading, so they can do they can read whatever they like. I don't limit them with the graded readers, because again, it's quite challenging for them to find materials that maybe that fits to extensive reading activities. But they can read any they can also start from reading a Twitter as well, or reading children books. Okay, so the first one, I gave them the 5-finger rules. So that's what they did. And then some of them did because they love to communicate through WhatsApp video calls. So they did this dialogue reading activity. I think that's what I can. Of course, I mean, their motivations in reading is not it's not that that's high. They're still struggling in reading and comprehending the text. But again, that's why that's what I said. We need to help them to develop this strategies or these skills, to prepare them, to equip them with this 21st century skills. Okay, through reading, through extensive reading. I think that's from me, Bu Rusiana.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Susi. Prof. Chini, you may add some more.
Okay, thank you so much. I think there's also another question on the chat from Siswoyo, which I can answer later. But now about reading, for the answer about reading with pre-service teachers. I think one of the important things about reading that I have found with students and with pre-service teachers is, number one, the book selection is very important. Because most of our pre-service teachers, maybe especially in Indonesia, where a lot of the materials are not in English, they may not know where to find the books or how to find the books. So very often we just say read, but they don't know what to read. So even in Singapore, we find that it is good to give the teachers some recommendations, what to read and where they can find the reading. So I think the book selection is very important. I think the second thing that Sean was talking about is about programming, putting aside time for instruction and programming. He asked about, cultivate ER through dialogic reading and the different strategies. So I think the important thing is, in the class with the pre-service teachers, we could have time. One strategy I have found very useful with both adults and children is reading aloud. I just take something and I read the first section. And then after that, after I have read the first section, they say, oh, I know what this article is about. Then they feel interested. What I want to read on, what else? So I find reading aloud is a very good strategy. you can do round robin reading if it's online as well, where you have the same article, but different people take the chance to read the story aloud, and it's like listening to an audiobook, but they are practicing reading and they're getting to enjoy listening to the story. We don't have to have reading aloud just for pre-kindergarten or primary school. I think we also like to listen to somebody read a good story. So I think that is another good strategy. I think another thing that we can do is, even right now, I have a book club with some of my colleagues. They used to be at NIE, but now they are in other parts of the world, in London, in UAE, and in the States. And we have a book club. So we come together and we share about, we say we will read a book over a month, and we come together and we take turns to lead the discussion. So I find that this book club for the more avid readers is very useful. Perhaps with the students who are not so strong, who feel like, wow, a book is so difficult to read, they can also read picture books, because they will feel that I can use this in my teaching, or, a simple book that they think their students will read. Then I think it gives them a purpose for reading. So I think purpose is very important. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Prof. Yes. Okay, Pak Willy.
Yes, can I add something, please? Very important for us to remember that extensive reading or inextensive reading, one of the most important, criteria for extensive reading is choice. There has to be an element of choice, both in terms of language and also in terms of content. In terms of language, very straightforward. The language will have to be easy for a particular student. So in a normal classroom, you may have 30 students. Their reading ability or their proficiency levels may be different, but each one of them should read a book that is easy for them. Yeah, so the word easy is very important. What is easy for me may not be easy for you, but the concept applies to everyone. That's point number one. So there's no issue of students reading, more advanced books or, not so advanced books. It doesn't really, it's not really that important in an extensive reading program, because students have different ability level. And because of that, we need to find books, or students need to find books that are easy for them. Number two is the content. Now, the content can be uninteresting, or the content can be interesting. In extensive reading, it has to be interesting for the students, not for us, but for the students. So these two combinations is what make a reading program extensive reading. If the language is manageable, easy, and if the contents are interesting, chances are students will continue reading even without us watching them. So that is the beauty of extensive reading. Unlike in a normal reading lesson, in our intensive reading lesson, very often we decide almost everything. We decide on the reading passage. We decide on the difficulty level of the reading passage. We decide on the content, on the type of reading that the students need to do. We also decide on the different types of activities that students need to do. But in extensive reading, as much as possible, we give students that choice to choose books that are relevant, that are interesting, and that is suitable from a linguistic perspective. Very important to remember choice.
Maybe can I just add to that, Rusiana, because
Yes.
you asked a question about, sometimes even the pre-service teachers are unmotivated to read. So I wanted to actually share, to give some examples of what teachers might be interested, what are some materials that teachers can find online for themselves to read. Because I think when we talk about extensive reading, it's about pre-service teachers getting their students to read, but it's also about pre-service teachers themselves reading. And I know during this time, it may be hard to find books. So what I'm sharing here, and this is what I found out from my research with secondary school students in Singapore, is that actually a lot of the readers are reading stories online. So I recommended one just now, which is Project Gutenberg, but these are the classics. And some people may say, oh, that is a little bit difficult, you know, for me. But there is also Wattpad, and Wattpad is quite interesting because it is online. So you go to your class, you tell your students, please take out your phones, okay? And when they take out the phone, you ask them to download this Wattpad app, and you can actually browse, and there are adventure stories, diverse stories, fan fiction, where they write about, you know, their role models and, you know, stars and all that. So for example, historical fiction, and these are from different people that contribute their own writing. So it could be that, you know, maybe this is one of the things that they could look at. AO's Archive of Our Own is another fanfic publicly open site where people can write their writing and send their stories in. Of course, I understand, you know, even in our schools, our teachers may not be, although they know the students can read this, they may not be so happy to have them read this, because then you have to curate you have to ask the students, what are you reading? You know, is it something you're supposed to read in school or not? But perhaps with the pre-service teachers during this time when they don't have so much access to books, that is also another way to get them to find books online that they can then choose and decide what they would like to read. So I think other than telling pre-service teachers that reading is important, we must show them where they can find these materials for reading.
Yes, telling is not good enough. Showing is excellent. Let me give you an example of a book that I often mention to my students during my, my lesson with them. The book is called Grit, the Power of Passion and Perseverance. And I would show a small video clip of the author actually explaining what the book is all about. And soon after, or the week after, everyone will say, oh, I bought the book, or I borrowed the book from the library. So that is the power of showing and demonstrating to the students the kind of books that you yourself are reading. Well, in fact, if you ask me, I would encourage every single teacher in the room here to pick up that book and read that book for yourself. The title is Grit, G-R-I-T, Grit, the Power of Passion and Perseverance. It's an excellent book that everyone should read. And next week, send me an email to say that you have just bought that book. I read that book 3 times because it's so good. Yes.
Okay.
Rose,
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Willy, Ibu Susilawati, and Professor Loh Chin Ee. Now let's proceed to the next session. So, okay, or let me read my notes. Okay. So the keys for pre-service teachers dealing with ER is giving recommendations, and then book or selection or choice, book selection or choice, and then content. I have a book club. So I have concluded this from Ibu Susilawati and Prof. Loh Chin Ee, and also Pak Willy. And then please not to only telling our student teacher or pre-service teachers, but then give them more access like Gutenberg and then WhatsApp, achieve of our own, and show them some meaningful and fruitful access so that they will know what to do. Okay, well, now let's move to panelist session. And for the first chance, I will invite Mas Guru, yeah? Okay, so I've got the name for you. Wait, let me read Mas Firly CV. Okay, so Mas Firly Ashari, or his full name is Firly Ashari. He is an alumni of Sampurna University, and now he is taking his master's degree at University of Indonesia. He has been teaching at Singapore School Pantai Indah Kapuk from 2015 to present, and he's also an assessment specialist of Cambridge Assessment National Education and Indonesian B examiner of International Baccalaureate. He will share his experience on extensive reading at CISPIC. So without further ado, Mas Guru Dwi Firly Asari, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ibu Rusiana. I will share my screen first.
Okay.
Wait, I think I need an access to be allowed to share my screen. Can I get the access from the moderator, maybe? From the presenter?
Dear Firly, you already can access the share screen.
Okay. Wait, let me... Wait, sorry. Okay. All right. Okay, now can everybody see my screen? Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you Ibu Rusiana, the other keynote speakers, and also the participants of this webinar. My name is Dwi Firly Ashari. I'm from Singapore School Pantai Indah Kapuk, and today I'm going to share the extensive reading implementation in our school, Singapore School Pantai Indah Kapuk, Jakarta. So this one, I'm Dwi Ashari. They usually call me Mr. Dwi atau or Pak Dwi in school. So I'm teaching secondary and junior college level in Singapore School Pantai Indah Kapuk, and here I'm going to share a bit about the extensive reading program in our school. So this is my presentation outline. So I'm going to start with why. And then there is also the reason why ER is implemented in our school, and also the implementation itself. So I'm going to share some activities that we do in implementing ER in our school, and also I'm going to share about problems and follow up. So it all started in 2016. So we had a new vice principal, and then he said that we need to make an adjustment for our school. We need to make some improvements, and he created some programs, and one of the programs is it's extensive reading. So this is because he wants see the homeroom time. So every morning we have the homeroom time from 7:45 to 8 in the morning, and sometimes the homeroom time is used to give the students announcement, to give the students information on what's going on in our school. And my former vice principal said, it's not effective. Why don't we just use the 15 minutes to do something more instead of giving them only information? So it all started in 2016, and we started building our extensive reading program since then. So why extensive reading? There are at least 3 main reasons to do extensive reading in your school. I know maybe there are it's not all of the schools are allowed to do extensive reading due to the regulations and also the curriculum and also the other stuff, but at least 3 main reasons to do extensive reading in our school, in your school. The first one is building students' confidence. So when they read, of course, after they read, they can share what they read to other students, to the teachers, to the school, other school members. And yeah, they build the students' confidence, and also they improve the students' language ability, which I will share later why this is very important. And then the third one is develop good reading habit, because in this era, the students, they like to read only in their smartphone, only social media. But the school wants that to read also books, to read other things besides the things that they have in their phone. So yeah. So this is the implementation. I will. This is 3 implementations that we do in our school regarding the extensive reading. The first one is reading corner in the class. So 2016, my vice principal told all the form teachers to provide a reading corner in their own class. So they provide a reading corner, and they ask the students to share. They ask the students to bring some books. And then to be placed in the bookshelves in the reading corner in the class, so they can read whenever they have time to read. And the books are also there are a lot of books. There are a lot of genres. From English books, I often saw Indonesian books. There are also some Chinese books in the reading corner, and they can read. And mostly the books are for like children and teenagers, and the stories are also very. I think it's quite easy to read and to understand. And this is the main program is a Dear Drop Everything and Read. It's a during homeroom time. It's from 7:45 to 8 o'clock in the morning, every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So on Monday and Wednesday we have the the school assembly, and the other 3 days during homeroom time, instead of giving the information, we will give them time to drop everything and read for 15 minutes, so they can read any of the books, not the books that we use in the class, not the books that we use in the lesson for discussion, but they can read other books. And sometimes they bring the books with a lot of pictures in it, and also the books with the interesting story, and yeah, they read the books. And then the third one is a book club and discussion. Actually, why I'm here to share, because I used to conduct the book club and discussion with the students in our school. So for the language ability, this school is quite unique, as a school is in Indonesia, but not most, some of the students, they have their English are way better than their Indonesian. So we have the book club, and I discuss with the English and Chinese teachers. We conduct a book club, and we mainly focus on the translation work. So for instance, they know the story from other countries, like they know the fairy tales, but they don't know the story from Indonesia, that we have a lot of stories as well. Pak Firman actually he introduced the translation books. I think I will discuss to the schools to buy the books like that, so we can have a book club and also discussion about the other stories from Indonesia.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Yes, Firly, you still have 2 minutes left.
Okay, Ibu. And then this is also the other programs that we do related to ER. So we have the sharing session. The students may share their commentary on the books they read on the secondary school assembly. So every Wednesday we have the secondary school assembly, where basically the students can share anything, their experience, even after they join the competition. They can share it to the students, to the teachers, and after reading, the students can share also their result, their commentary to the other students in the school assembly. So we can share about the book that they read in the secondary school assembly. Okay, next is a problem. So we have some problems on implementing the ER. The first one is students' commitment. So for the drop everything and read, sometimes I found that some of the students still use the time to do other works, like doing the homework or doing the other works on the laptop. And they said, oh, we read the books on the laptop, but then I found that some of the students use that time to do the work. And also the classroom culture. The culture of the classroom, it's like it's all about learning, studying the lesson or the subjects. When they use the time to read the books on the free time, sometimes the other students said that you better do it for finishing your other works related to the curriculum. And also the online school learning. This one, we find very difficult to conduct the extensive reading during the online school learning, because usually in the morning we have the homeroom time, but we use that to share the information and also check the students. And this year we decided to check the students instead of doing the ER. So we do this, we have the conversation, because it's hard for us to do that. And also the academic and curriculum requirement, because we have the curriculum to cover, and then they also have the academic stuff to do, and that requirements is also it's very hard to complete it also. And it's very hard for us to do the ER because of these 4 problems. And maybe this is the solution. Like teachers, students, and school management should work together to create a suitable environment to implement ER. Because in the school context, there are a lot of challenges. There are a lot of stuffs that we need to consider. Sometimes it's not from the teachers, it's not from the students, it's from the school management, it's from the school schedule that we need to anticipate before we do the ER itself. And this is my I will propose this to the school. I want them to make a poster presentation. So after we do the set of extensive reading, I want them to come up with a poster, and then they can present the poster maybe in the language fair or something. And then after that, the other school members can see it, so they can be motivated to read also. I think that's it. Thank you very much for the time, and I'll give it back to Ibu Rusiana.
Okay, thank you, Mas Fili Asari. Now let's move to the next panelist. The second panelist will be the last panelist, Desi Putri Octavia. So she is an undergraduate student of English Language Education of Sampurna University. She's a volunteer in Indonesian Future Leader from 2017 to present, and recently she's a writer at Seed School. Her experience are teacher assistant in EF and ambassador in the International Model United Nations in 2019, delegate of Japan Asia Youth International Model in 2018, and she will share the experience on ER today. Well, Mbak Desi Putri Octavia, you there? Are you ready for the presentation?
Sure.
Okay. Right, nice hair. I like it.
Thank
okay, you will have around 10 minutes. But if you spend less, it's okay. But more than 10 minutes is not allowed. Okay, the floor is yours, Mbak Desi.
Okay. Can you see my screen now? But it's loading. All right. Oh, it's loading.
Yes, I can see it clearly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks for having me. My name is Desi Putri Octavia. I'm a first year student here at Sampurna University, and it's an honor and privilege to be invited to participate in this 10 sessions of virtual talk. So my gratitude goes to all the faculty members of Sampurna University, ERA and ERA Foundations, and my inspiring lecturer, Bu Susi, and greetings to Prof. Loshini and Mas Ferman as the guest speakers, and also Mas Firly. So I'm delighted to be here today, and allow me in this occasion to share about my experience on doing extensive reading and what makes me motivated on doing this, and also the opportunities or benefit that I gain in my capacity as a college student and future educator. So we know that having the ability to read for a long time period is powerful. And I think people who are able to read extensively have access to the areas of the world they may have never experienced before. And at the beginning, I asked myself that if I could do one thing every day that would improve my English language vocabulary, knowledge, reading, and writing ability and even my speaking and listening skills, wouldn't I do it? And can also increase the motivations and self-esteem. And that one thing I'm talking about, extensive reading. And besides, like, extensive reading also helps me to be the person that I aspire to become as a teacher. And so what's other? And yeah. So the virtual circle, the one with positive impact, ensures that as we read successfully in the foreign language, so we are encouraged to read more. Thus, I think the effect of self-esteem and motivations of reading the first book is undeniable. And I remember that my first time reading experience for pleasure was a novel my brother gave me in English. So with a limited knowledge of language ability, I didn't stop. Instead, I continued until the first chapter ended. So I figured out the meaning at the end of every chapter. Sometimes I highlighted the words, and I didn't know the meaning, but by doing so, I strive hard to learn more. And finally, I can feel myself as a self-motivated, independent learners. And furthermore, reading makes us better humans as we continuously fill up with the informations, and it allows us to travel when we feel stuck. And it gives us ideas and insights that would take us forever to grasp. And it makes us understand that there are many realities and cultures and ways of seeing things and or feeling that is always possible to turn into the next page, and be it like a literally or metaphorically. And in fact, that reading is essential ingredient for lifelong learning, and especially when we aspire to be an educator. Indeed, we have to be thoughtful and extensive reading. I think it helps me as a future educator to be better informed, and both about the profession and about the world. And this makes the teacher more interesting to be around. And in fact, and students generally like the teacher to be interesting people, and for our own sanity. And we need to read outside the language teaching for the sake of students too. But sadly, many people feel like their learning stopped when they left school. And I think reading is the antidote to these situations. Reading is also a great social leveler. I think books are not reserved for super intellectuals. Reading is open to everyone. And I think this is the message that I want you to take home today. And I think about the reading is easy and enjoyable. And I think reading is like any other habits, that it grows and grows the more we do it, and the more it becomes a second nature. So, but how do we create these habits, and how do we remove the weird feeling that reading is something that we have to do instead of we want to do? What motivated me to be interested on doing extensive reading as a college student and future educator? So let me tell you a little bit of a story. First, it started off when I was working as a teacher assistant at English First, EF, and the teachers there were very enthusiastic in terms of doing extensive reading, like a novel, and in fact that one of them was also a writer. And we often talk about our favorite books and how we react to it, something like a book club. And so what I'm trying to say is that how impactful it is of having a positive reading environment within our surrounding. And moreover, it gives us something positive pulse to do that. And it is also fun, but also educational at the same time. And also it expands our ability of seeing things and to enhance our imagination also. And it helps us learn how to build this empathy and to understand more about the world. And it helps us to build independence and self-confidence. So, and the second, what motivates me most to read is because I want to be a better writer. And there are two ways to become a better writer: write a lot and read a lot. And I think that reading and writing are something inseparable, right? the better writers have to have a tendency to be exceptional readers, and a better reader can produce exceptional writing. And I think that a writer who doesn't read is like a musician who doesn't listen to music, or a filmmaker who doesn't watch movies. So I think it's impossible to do a good work without experiencing the good work that has been done before. And my mentor always told me that read as much as you can, because by reading you can get a different exposure on how to actually write and know different type of writing style from different author. So, and the third is because I also aspire to be a teacher, and the teacher is a role model, and a role model of a reader and for their students, and something like an active member of the classroom reading community, and how to demonstrating what it means to be a reader, and rewards of being a reader. As we will see that reading develops a whole range of language learning process. It does the work of many teachers that combine into one place. I think that it provides a stable source of language to work with, and it is very easily adapted into highly interactive and communication driven tasks. So I think that students should be encouraged by the teachers themselves to learn and to read, because having the ability to read allows them to understand and learn informations without depending on others. So on the other hand, luckily in my campus provide such a great learning experience in terms of allowing the students to build a love of reading, whether the resources or the material. For example, in my previous semester, I took Table 1 course as a mandatory course to take as a FOE students. And the lecturer, Bu Susi, also she assigned the student to choose any books to read for a couple weeks. And as a project, we were given the options to create the final project as the outcomes of that reading assignment. And I choose the storytelling because I think that it is a unique way for me to develop an understanding of the story. And I also added some comic figures to make the story feel more alive, and some visualizations on it. So an additional, so not only Table 1, I think in Bahasa Indonesia class and compositions, we tend to read a lot of books, whether it's a novel, short stories like that. And I think that we were also given the opportunity to explore more about reading. And okay, so and also for the past few months, I have the opportunity to write some blogs for newly established startup. It's coming up soon, which focuses its field on online educations and provides an affordable education for all. And I think that reading plays a vital role in my development as a person, and towards, and also towards my future career. And all I can
Excuse me, but Desi, you still have 2 minutes more left.
Yeah,
2 more minutes left.
Yes. So all I can say is that reading the good and the bad inspire people. For me, I still have a long way to go, and my journey in developing the love of reading will not end after I graduate, but it will be my long life a friend, as it feeding my mind and soul. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mbak Desi. Are you really a freshman? Are you a first? Oh yeah. Oh, that's great. So I was hypnotized by your presentation. It was kind of nice sharing. So I hope that there are so many participants of Professor Prestigious, so they can learn a lot from you, from your presentation, from your sharing. Well, now, yeah, okay. Now let's move to the next session. We will have question and answer, but I think it will be less than 10 minutes. And let me check okay, wait. So I have to go to this one. The question from So there is a question from YouTube. I think for Pak Firman. I'd like to ask about culturally familiar text in this globalization era. It's important to introduce the multicultural. How do we prepare students to read a culturally different text? Pak Firman, are you there?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think this question is addressed to Bapak. Please,
Yes.
Bapak.
So I think I agree with all the speakers that students should read a lot of books and with a wide range of genres. But the problem is sometimes students need a little help to, pick up what books should I read and what genres would be interesting to me. And so that being said, I think the role of teacher is to provide options for them, provide options that might be one of the options is culturally relevant. So one of the questions or one strategy that we can do is to get to know more about our students' life. And some of the questions that you might want to ask for ourselves is that first, maybe what type of text might be relevant to their culture and experience? And then what are some texts that you already have and that are culturally relevant for your students in the class? And maybe the third questions would be, what are some critical questions that you have asked and would ask when reading texts that reflect the culture, stories, and identities of your student? So the idea here is really providing options. I would suggest that we have a list of options, like, bunch of lists of options that students can pick up and choose their own books to read. I think that would be my answer. Thank you.
Luciana, can I just add a little bit to that about the culturally relevant reading?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, in Singapore, I teach literature teachers as well. So these are English teachers who teach literature. And one of the things that my colleagues and I have done is we have this book. I don't think you can see it. It's called Little Things. And what we tried to do with it is, because at that time in 2013, we felt that a lot of students didn't have exposure to Singapore poetry. So, and a lot of the poems that were out there were very difficult to read. So we said, but we have so many good poems out there. And so we started to collect the poems, 60% which are from Singapore and 40% from different parts of the world, including Asia. And more recently, we have a second book called Poetry Moves, and that's more difficult. It's for older teenagers. But I would like to give an example of a poem we have in the book, if you don't mind. And I think, it's a poem written by a Singapore poet, and I thought it's quite interesting because, it's in Jakarta. And it says that on our second honeymoon in 20 years or so, we took an evening ride by Becak through the bumpy old streets of Jogja to catch a fragment of the Ramayana dance. At Dalam Pujo Kusuma, the air moon cool, the dusk settled at last. After a hot day brings freshness to our ears, which I pray, my sweet, will wear as well for yet another 20. I'm sorry if I pronounce anything incorrectly, but I just thought this is so nice because it's about the writer is writing to his wife about him having been to a place. So I want to suggest to some of the teachers that sometimes they can also look for poems and short stories. And when I was a teacher, before I started teaching at the National Institute of Education, I used to put together anthologies. Like, I'll find my favorite poems, my favorite books, and then I'll say, well, some of them must be relevant to the students. And I put them together into a book and I print them for my students. But now, of course, you can also do an ebook. And the students can have choice as well. The reason why we did the anthology was so that maybe in class, we only teach 10 poems, but there are 80 poems and the students bring it home and they have the chance to read the poems. And we can ask them to have the activity where we ask them to read the poems and find the poem that they like and share with the class and read for the class. So I think that's another way that we can collect resources that we think our students will understand and be able to connect with. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Prof. Lauchini. And I think we have answered all questions. And for the thank you once again for the main speakers, for the panelists, and for Mas Guru, yes, I've got a new term for you, Bapak Dwi Fili Azari, Mas Guru, and Mbak Desi Octavia. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And some ERA members have chat me that we would like to share what you have said to us today in this virtual talk 10 to our students. So you will be kind of inspiring person for our students, for our pre-service teachers, yeah, for students who are learning in our university. Well, that's all for the virtual talk 10. I will give the time back for the MC, Bapak Bakti.
Thank you, Ibu Luciana, as our
Yeah.
moderator. Yeah, thank you for your contribution.
Yeah, you're
that you've
welcome.
done. Yeah. Thank you for the honorable speakers as well, the ERA members for sharing with us, and all participants who have contributed in today's workshop. But before you leave, don't forget to fill out the exit form, which will be provided in the chat box and also in the slide that I am going to share here. So here is the slides. Please capture it or take a picture. The exit forms, just go to gg.gg/exit-ticket_VT10. Okay, and then after that, you complete all of the parts in exit form, and then you'll get the certificate and also materials from our honorable speakers. Thank you. And not all, we don't stop yet. Let's take a virtual group picture. So all participants, please turn on your video because we are going to capture your faces as well. Okay. Yeah, we have a lot. So please, the host or the committees can help capturing the moment today.
Yang bertugas siapa?
Okay, I'll also take one. Okay.
Oh, wait.
Okay. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay. And okay, next. We have more participants. Okay, now this part. Please turn on your video for those who are still hiding the faces. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, the second part. Wait a moment. Okay, and then the third part, please, the third part, turn on your video. Okay, I see a lot. Okay, that is the third part. Okay, and then the fourth one. Okay, turn on your video, please. Okay, the last part, a moment. Yes, turn on your video. Okay, thank you. So once again, yeah, I already shared the slide before that the link is gg.gg/virtualtalk_VT10, and you can complete the exit form, and after that you will get the materials and certificates from there. Well, that's wrapping up our event today. On behalf of Sampurna University, thank you to all speakers and participants for making time to join us here today. Also, we would like to thank you to Indonesian Extensive Reading Association, the members, and also Extensive Reading Foundation for your tremendous support. It has been our pleasure to host this event, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Surely we will have one more event on August 22nd. Please wait for that. And one beautiful quote from us: one desire to change must be greater than our desire to stay the same. Thank you for coming, and we wish you a pleasant day. See you.
Thank you, Pak Bakti. Thank you, Bu Susi, and all the committee members and all the speakers. Hats off to you
You're
all.
welcome, Pak Prik.
Thank you, Pak
Pak.
Suryati.
Thank you, Profi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.